Welcome to For the Love of Licking County, a podcast where we bring you everything on leadership, entrepreneurship, and community impact. Presented by the Licking County Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Jamie Wright of Wright Auto Insurance. We're coming to you from right here in Newark, Ohio.
Whether you're a job seeker or a business with staffing needs, Ohio Means Jobs Licking County is here for you. Our center is fully equipped and expertly staffed to help you with your employment and workforce needs. Stop in and see us at 998 East Main Street in Newark or call us at 740-670-8700.
Hello and welcome everybody back to For the Love of Licking County. I'm your host, Jamie Wright of Wright Auto Insurance. And this month is a special month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And who better than to join us than Miss Penny Sitler? Thank you so much for being here. Penny has been with Mental Health America for 8.5 years now.
9 in November coming up.
That's amazing. And we kind of got together and talked a little bit on how we wanted to form the show, and we came up with this amazing topic, Cultivating Calm in 2022. Now, I think this one is going to be welcomed by all, I'm sure, because it's been a crazy year, right?
It sure has been.
Yeah. Well,
it has been a year.
So welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. I am so excited and emotional a little bit about this month's show. So I really appreciate you being here.
Well, I thank you for highlighting this topic because in the past it's been such a stigmatized topic, and I don't like that it is. We all should be talking about it. If you hurt your arm or, I have AFib or whatever happens to people, we talk about it. And we should be talking about our mental health just as easily.
I love it. And I actually want to talk about that specifically too when we get there. Now, we will say that Penny is not a clinician, but her experience and your expertise in this field for the past almost 9 years does make you very profound to dig in with us and talk about this too. And so, the first thing that I just want to define it, right? Let's just define it. What is mental health? Because like you just said, in the stigma or whatever you want to call it, I mean, there's such a focus on mental health, and it's relatively a new topic, right?
It's new that people are willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when we think about our mental health, we think about being able to work or go to school and perform our daily activities and maintain relationships in our life. Those kind of are the big three things that get impacted by our mental health when it's not going well.
Yeah. And I like, just everything, right? Just everything that we do is our mental health. And we don't think about it in those terms too. So, we are coming out of this pandemic, and we're entering into some of the most challenging times of our lives. And a lot of things happened, right? Some good, some bad, but change. Everything changed.
Yes,
Nonetheless, everything changed.
Did it ever?
I really want you to open up and talk to us about the term collective trauma, the trauma reaction that we're kind of all experiencing right now. Talk to us about what you've experienced with this in the last 2 years, because I'm hearing so many people say the new normal, and I'm not sure what that really means. You know what I mean? So talk to us about that.
And we may not know for a while what our new normal
Yeah.
is. So when we talk about collective trauma, typically a trauma might be a fire or a weather incident or someone being attacked, someone dying, an illness. It affects certain people. This pandemic affected everyone. We all were impacted by it for the same length of time. I believe we've come out of the worst of it. We don't really know down the road how long COVID will be around, and some people have long-term medical effects because of it. And it seems that we're still having people test positive. We don't have as many hospitalizations, so it doesn't seem to be at the really high-level pandemic situation that it was for so long. The hardest thing about it was it went on, and we had no end date. Typically, if you have a storm, it comes and it goes, and it's done. And yes, you might have, damage to clean up or people that were injured and things like that, but it it's over when it's over.
Yeah.
And this just took a really long time. It impacted people so much because it made us isolate. We know that isolation is not healthy for us. Harvard did a study a number of years ago that showed the impact of isolation on our well-being is the equivalent of a 15 cigarette a day habit.
Really?
Yes. So, a lot of times people don't recognize that correlation between our physical well-being and our mental well-being. But let's face it, our heads are not disconnected from our bodies. We're all one. We're all a whole being. And if something's going on up here, it's affecting us down here. That's why a lot of times when you hear about signs and symptoms of mental illness, they will be very physical signs like neck ache, headache, stomach issues, all of those kinds of things. Mental health issues can physically hurt the person that's suffering from them.
Oh, yeah. And like I was watching a show and they were talking about how your trauma stays in your body.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so obviously your body then physically manifests that trauma. I mean, there's tons of different ways and everybody's different, but I was fascinated by this particular show and the energy work that they were doing to release these traumas that were just dormant kind of like in their physical being.
That is so true. And I know I've been in a session once where we were talking about different stretches to do for different parts of your body and how certain things like your psoas muscle holds stress. And I know for a lot of people, their necks and shoulders, they know when they're stressed because they'll feel it through that physical part of their body. Some people, like I said, get headaches and they may be stress related. Some people with heart conditions, they may be exacerbated by stress. So we all respond to trauma differently. If you've talked to one person about their trauma, you've talked to one person and how they've manifested it, how they have made changes to their lives, whatever they've done to be able to have the tools they need to respond appropriately to that trauma.
And like you had mentioned, like this is extremely important to talk about because everybody experiences this. Everybody.
Sure.
Yeah.
At some level or another.
Right.
And we all have various levels of what we call resilience, the ability to bounce back from those unexpected, difficult things that happen in life. I had someone once write me a letter after I wrote an article about managing stress, and he said, I disagree with you completely. I think you just get rid of everything that causes you stress. And then you don't have to worry about
Wonderful.
it. And I thought, so when my car needs to be repaired, I just get rid of it. Or if my job upsets me, I just quit.
Right.
Or if my spouse makes me mad, see ya.
Yeah.
That's not how I operate, but apparently it works for some people.
Right. Hey,
Yes. Unexpected things happen in life. I call it life is messy.
Yeah.
And we don't always have control over everything.
Yeah.
So how we respond to those things that are out of our control is really important to how well we will manage stress and trauma.
That's great too. And we'll kind of talk about that in itself, but what are some of the things that you see that causes, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the things that you guys are seeing right now that are causing these mental health circumstances?
Oh boy, I wish if I had the answer to that, Jamie. And remember, I'm not a clinical person.
That's right.
I'm a prevention specialist.
That's
so I
right.
really hope to help people
Yeah.
learn how to prevent getting really sick from mental health issues. Gosh, there's just so much. I mean, we're hearing about, and we talked about this a little bit earlier this morning, we're hearing about college athletes taking their lives, other people thinking that's their out. There's no explanation other than that they're in so much pain. They don't see a better way out of whatever that situation is they found themselves in. I'm not saying they're making a sane, rational decision. I'm saying they've had enough. They just don't know what else to do. Now, having said that, we are not having a huge increase in the number of suicides here locally in Licking County. We're having the same too big of a number.
Yeah.
But I just would love for people to be able to figure out what to do instead of that.
Yeah.
who can I talk to? What will help me? What makes me relax? What makes me feel more in control? If we can just get people to that place where they've done the self-care and they've done the work to understand what they need to be able to cope with the things that they're dealing with.
Which, I mean, it kind of brings me into my next question is, I think we need to put it out there like, hey, it is okay to not be okay.
I love that.
Like, let's just rejoice in the fact that it is okay to not be okay.
Right.
And so, and speaking of prevention, what are some things that I could do? Like, what do I do if I'm worried about my mental health?
First of all, we have great access to, what is the word I'm looking for?
No, you're fine.
Assessments. What are those? The things on our website. Mental health screenings. Thank you.
Screenings,
okay,
yes.
Let's back up.
You go, girl.
That word just left me. Okay.
Assessments are just fine too.
Yeah.
Screenings.
Okay. So on our website, mhalc.org,
Write that down.
we have screenings that people can take if they're concerned about themselves. If they have somebody else in their life that they're concerned about, they can encourage someone to get on our website and click on those mental health screenings. There are 8 or 9 different ones that you can take, depending on if you think you might have anxiety or depression or another mental health disorder.
Okay.
And there are some that are appropriate for young people as well.
And this information doesn't go anywhere. It's for you, so it's completely anonymous.
Exactly. It's completely anonymous. Now, at the end of the screening, if it appears that you should be talking to somebody, it's going to suggest that. It will give you ideas for what you can do for yourself to move forward. And we do aggregate that data, our national organization does, and they see where in the country are people taking the screenings, what kind of results are they getting, and things like that. So it's kind of interesting to see that data.
Okay.
At one point, Licking County, Ohio, had the highest per capita screenings for our national organization.
Really?
Yes. So,
wow.
So that tells me that there were a lot of people that were concerned, wondering, how am I doing? Do I need some help? And that is step one.
Yeah.
Asking that question, do I need some help? If you think you do, it never hurts to keep moving forward. Whether it be talking to somebody that you know will listen to you, your spouse, your parent, your best friend, your neighbor, your doctor. Our family physicians and pediatricians are sometimes our first line of defense when getting help for a mental health condition, or helping us just decide, do I even have a condition that needs to be helped? Or what else should I be doing?
And Mental Health America can actually kind of help facilitate all of these thoughts too, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As I said, we're non-clinical, but we can certainly help talk with people, make suggestions. If we feel like it's a critical issue, we can get you in touch with our crisis services here in the county. And so there are things that we can do for sure.
And, we've said this before too. I mean, Licking County has fantastic resources. And so really all you do need to do is reach out to one, and then they'll connect you with a web of other people too.
Exactly.
Mental health and otherwise as well. We have a ton of nonprofit organizations here that do a lot of different really cool things to help people in times of need, or have the opportunity for you to help somebody too in those times as well. And you bring up a really good point. What do I do if I'm worried about my friends and family? Because oftentimes that's really hard. You can't sometimes speak into somebody else's life if they are in the middle of a crisis, or because you can't make somebody do something that they don't want to do or haven't decided on their own. I mean, I'm a person that wears my heart on my sleeve. I'm very comfortable and cozy with my emotions, so I don't mind to talk about them. But oftentimes, there's people in my life that are not. And so that's hard for us to communicate, hey, you need to talk to me, when they don't want to. So what do you suggest, if anything, to help a relative or friend if you find them in crisis?
First of all, talk to them.
Yeah.
Do it privately.
Yeah.
Say to them, I'm concerned. This is what I'm seeing. Make it about you, not a finger pointing, you're doing this, you're doing that. Instead, I've noticed you haven't been coming to the family dinners on Sunday, and we really miss you. Is there something going on Sundays now? Are you not comfortable? Kind of delve in, ask questions that are not just yes and no questions.
Yeah.
Let them know, and don't give up on people.
Yeah.
Stay connected. I think that connection, as human beings, we are hardwired to stay connected. So even if someone's pushing you away, if you're concerned, don't let it go. If you hear any words like, it won't matter if I'm here tomorrow or not, or no one cares if I show up anyway, really have your ears perked up about those kinds of comments, because those could indicate that they're thinking about taking their life. And be very blunt and ask them the question.
Yeah.
Just say, are you considering are you considering taking your life?
Really?
Yes. We don't want to
Sugarcoat?
Yeah, you don't want to sugarcoat it. You want to be direct. That's the best way to ask. If they say no, okay, they've said no. But if you start seeing them collect the means, or you just are more concerned and you don't believe them, which can be the case, stay with them. Stick with them. Don't let them go. If you're really concerned, then you can call 911 and let people know, I've got someone I'm concerned about his life, her life, and I want to make sure that they're safe. This is what I'm seeing. You can ask for what we call a CIT officer, which is a crisis intervention trained. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, a CIT officer. At any rate, you can ask for a CIT officer, and that person is really trained to work with people when they're in a crisis situation.
Yep.
We also have 211. 211's not the high level of 911. If you just feel like things aren't quite right and you feel like you need more resources, 211 is a great place to call. Put the phone on speaker. Say, I'm here with my cousin or whoever it might be. I'm really concerned. This is what I've noticed. And let that person on the other end of the phone ask some questions and get involved, and maybe make some suggestions about some things you might want to do.
Okay, well, that's good to know too. 211. Which brings me a kind of, preventative measures as far as protecting my mental health. I mean, there's a slew of them, of course. But we talk about this spectrum of mental health, right? We've kind of talked about, the higher levels, but there's also, like, for lack of a better term, there's the ones and twos. There's the people that wake up and feel a certain way about something, and then they're just having this time kind of getting through this particular season of life, or whatever the circumstance might be. You had mentioned, if you break your foot, you're going to go to the doctor, but I don't necessarily wake up and say, man, I'm not, I've been feeling this way for a little while. I'm not necessarily going to think to myself, oh, I should probably call the doctor. And I think there's a stigma around, focusing on your mental health and how it relates to the rest of your wellness, right?
Sure. There has been for decades.
Yeah.
Centuries, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I know that, like, the things that affect my mental health when we talk about prevention, like, if I don't sleep, ooh, Lordy, the next day is not fun. It is not fun at all. And so, I could, like you mentioned earlier, like, I could remove things. I can go on vacation, but we can't always kind of afford that, either financially or with our time, some, children,
sure,
whatever the case might be. And I came up with this saying a while ago. And I said, it's interesting to me how we run to the things that kill us to make us stronger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether that's I stay up too late at night, right, watching my shows because I'm escaping my reality or whatever. Some people run to substances, right? Or other things. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that we run to try to gather strength from that end up making it worse. Right.
And we call those coping skills.
Yes.
And not all coping skills are positive.
Yes.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yes.
So what kind of preventative measures might there be? I mean, we talked about sleep, obviously,
Yes.
or
Health 101.
Yeah.
So good sleep
Yep.
hygiene, right?
Yep.
Getting plenty of sleep. We hear people say, always try to go to bed close to the same time and get up at close to the same time, just to get in that routine. Put away the screen. Don't have your phone on the pillow next to you because it's going to disturb your sleep.
Right.
The lights and so on.
I do all of this, by the
Yes.
way.
There have been a lot of studies about how that blue light impacts your
Yes.
ability to sleep and all of that, the quality of your sleep and so on.
Right.
So we're not all going to be able to do all of that all the time, but
Yeah.
if you can just aim for as much of that as you can, it'll
Yeah.
really help you. The second thing is eating healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just
Sure.
huge. If we can fuel ourselves with things that are healthy, that is great. And I'm not telling you that I'm a perfect eater. I love snacks and I love chocolate. So I'm, right up there with the rest of you in terms of not always making the perfect choices, but 90% of the time I eat relatively healthily. So I think that's a good place to start. And the third thing is getting exercise, making sure you're moving some every day. Just whether it's walking or playing basketball or riding your bike or swimming or whatever it is you love to do, playing with your kids, taking your dog for the walk, all of those things are great choices.
Yeah, I mean, and I will add, sweeping your floor is exercise.
There you go.
Cooking is still getting up and moving around and just
I kind
movement.
of, doing laundry, running up and down the steps, putting things away.
Yeah.
All of that builds into you having movement in your day. Just don't park yourself in a chair all day long if you can help it. We all talk about how our office settings are not really good for us.
Yeah.
They're bad for our backs and all of probably our
eyes.
hearts and all kinds of things, right? So if you can just build that in too, that's really smart. Even if it's, oh gosh, I've been sitting here for an hour, I should get up and walk around the house.
Yeah.
Even if that's all it is.
Our
It's
watches
helpful.
remind us to stand up all the time.
Exactly. Yes.
I think the key here, I'm hearing you say, is like, and we've heard this all before, but everything in moderation, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you're going to
Yes.
fry something, if you're going to eat something fried, like just make it a vegetable.
And don't do it every day, right?
I mean, I love my fried pickles. That's all I
Sure,
have to say about
sure.
that.
Can I just add on
Yeah,
top
please
of
do.
those kind of health 101 things, the sleep, the eating, the exercise, everyone needs to figure out what their thing or things are that they love to do, whether it be some kind of a craft or a sport or reading or watching your show, whatever it is that gives you that little bit of escape, that relaxation, something where you can just kind of turn off all the questioning and all of the conversation in your brain and all the things you're concerned about, where you can just truly take a breath. It might be meditation, it could be any one of a number of things, but everyone needs to know what those things are that feed them, that help them tone everything down.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what our triggers are, right? That set us off.
Absolutely.
I think we need to understand where we go when we are triggered. I think a lot of times we're triggered and then we just sit in that tension for the longest time, which turns into negative things or whatnot. So it's
Exactly.
like, hey, I'm triggered. Okay, now I know I need to go read my book for 10 pages or
Absolutely.
I need to go. I mean, I recommend Outlander. I love that show much.
I did all of those on books on CD.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh man. Well, we've rewatched the series twice now, so I'm assuming that we'll watch it again. But it's just one of those things where
It gives
my
you a
brain
release.
shuts down.
Yeah. It lets you take time out from
Yeah.
all of the things you're always doing.
Yeah. I love it.
I believe you're probably that type A personality,
Yeah.
Jamie.
Just
saying.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Just me.
and
just a little
and you've got to
bit.
turn that off sometimes.
Sure. Absolutely. So again, Outlander.
Outlander is self-care.
That's right. Self-care. I really want to talk about, I mean, the majority of the listeners here are in some type of professional setting, business setting, community outreach, entrepreneurship. I mean, so work-related stress, right? And job burnout. Like this is a really real thing that I really wanted to touch on today. And I kind of did some research into this. So I just wanted to make some definitions and maybe go through some of these things because I think that this is super relevant especially to this month's show. And I really wanted to give some people like an aha moment of, wow, I'm experiencing this. I'm going through this. I need either help getting through this or validating. I think validation is a big one, right? Just validating people's feelings.
Yes, because a lot of times people are thinking, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous that I feel this way.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. Yep. Nobody's alone in any of this. I guarantee there's people going through the same specific things that we all are too. So a real quick Google search has given me a definition of burnout. I know that we've heard the term before, but I think sometimes maybe it's exaggerated in terms of like our day to day. Oh, I'm giving it this term because I want to either make an excuse about how I'm feeling or use this as a humorous thing for a defense mechanism, right? Burnout is a form of exhaustion caused by constantly feeling swamped. It's a result of excessive and prolonged emotional, physical, and mental stress. In many cases, burnout is related to one's job. Burnout happens when you are overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to keep up with life's incessant demands. Wow, right? I mean, that's an actual definition. So, and we talked too a little bit before, and you were making a comment of like, hey, Jamie, like, I see so much of like you and me when I was younger. And I told you, and this is me being super vulnerable right now with everybody listening. Like I have this, I don't go to work from 9 to 5. I work constantly, right? And every decision that we have made as a family, as far as the business is concerned, or the nonprofit or whatever, we've made it together, right? We've sit down and we've said, okay, is this what we want to do? Can we do this? How do we do this? What's this going to look like? So kind of everything in my life gets meshed up. And I gave you the visual of 2 different color Laffy Taffies. When you pull them together, you can't pull them apart in the same shape or color, right? So everything kind of gets meshed up a little. So there's not just like work-related stress. Sometimes it feels like life-related stress too. So I like how they say, burnout is in many cases related to one's job, but a lot of times I think people right now are feeling overwhelmed because it's all the time. It's not just at work. It comes home with us too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think about families that have young children and what we've been through the last 2 years,
Shoo.
and I'm so thankful that my children are grown.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have to crisis school our children, which is what people were doing. They were not homeschooling unless that's what they had chosen, and they were in charge of their curriculum and all of that.
Correct.
The rest of you did not homeschool.
Right.
You crisis schooled because you had no choice.
Yeah.
And just trying to balance all of that and I always talk about keeping all the balls in the air. Mm-hmm. I'm really good at that. I thrive on having multiple things happening in my life. But when there are too many balls in the air, you cannot keep them all afloat.
Right.
It just doesn't work. No one can.
Right.
So yes, you've got to know when enough is enough. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to say, okay, I need to speak with my supervisor because I want to make sure I'm doing this well. Mm-hmm. Most of the time when people get burned out, it's because they have at their core the desire to do well and to do a complete job and really do work that they're proud of. And when they get to a point where they can't manage everything on their plate, they really need to figure out a way to divide and conquer or somehow work with someone else to get everything done so that they don't just keep spiraling downward until they're angry and resentful and all of that. You don't want to get to that place.
Mm-hmm. It's sacrifice.
Exactly.
It's sacrifice. I mean, that's a hard conversation, I think, for people right now. Everything stopped in 2020. Mm-hmm. And here we are in 2022, and everything is just full force again. And
everything's full force again.
It takes that's a transition.
Sure.
There was no transition, so I think it's just kind of everybody's got all these balls up in the air.
Yes.
I actually visually saw like these marbles up in the air. So figure out what that looks like, I think.
Yeah. And no one wants to let things come crashing down because what are you going to pick?
Sure.
Are you going to pick the project for that important client? Or are you going to pick one of your kids? Or are you going to pick your parent or your spouse?
Right.
Because again, a lot of people have a lot of things pulling on them.
Yeah.
And they're all important. maybe not equally, because I know we try to
Sure.
say, okay, family first or whatever our code is for ourselves. But I think that hopefully workplaces are able to see, okay, I don't want to lose this good employee. I want to work with this person and make it all work for us and for them. So what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yeah. Well, and this is good too, because I don't know, this particular Google search got me to 12 stages of burnout. I just want to quickly go through them because I don't think that people understand what you were just saying. Because this is actually a part of it. So 1, excessive drive and ambition. 2, pushing yourself to work harder. 3, neglecting your own needs. 4, displacement of conflict. So that is, if that's not ringing a bell, instead of acknowledging that you're pushing yourself to the max, you blame your boss, the demands of your jobs, your colleagues for your troubles. Number 5, no time for non-work related needs. So you begin to withdraw. 6 is denial. 7 is withdrawal. 8, behavioral changes. 9, depersonalization, feeling detached from your life and your ability to control your life. I think that's when the crisis mode hits. Inner emptiness or anxiety. So feeling empty. And this is where I think people go to those coping mechanisms of you turn to thrill-seeking behaviors to cope with your emotions. 11 is depression. And then 12 is mental or physical collapse. So those were just quickly the 12 stages of burnout that I had written down. There might be more of them. But that's so true. Like, we don't think that part of this burnout process is our overdrive, is our ambition, is, we want to do all these things so wonderfully. And then we work harder and push ourselves. And then the rest of these things seem to follow.
Right.
So I think it's hard, especially now too, to find balance, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
It is hard. It's always been hard. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a person that jumps in with both feet and you get involved in a lot of different things and you've got a busy personal life and a busy work life, there will be times that you feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen. And overwhelmed, you can manage. You can say, okay, whoa, back down.
Yeah.
I heard you say one of the most important things on that list, when you begin to neglect your own needs.
Yeah.
That is where you really need to be able to say, okay, this is not all right. And a lot of people will say to me, but that sounds so selfish.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want you to stop and think about self-care and why it's so important. I really push people to think self-care and do all those things we just talked about: exercising, eating well, getting plenty of sleep, getting extra sleep if you need it, doing those things you love to do that help you relax. Be with friends, don't isolate, be with people that care about you and that will lift you up. Those are really important. And if you are trying to be all things to all people without taking care of those own personal needs that you have, you're going to find yourself lacking. You're not going to be able to take care of those other people and those other things that you're responsible for. We talk about, glass half full. If your glass is not full enough, you're not going to be able to do everything you're supposed to do. And you're not going to do a good job for the other people that are counting on you. It's really important.
Well, I always reference this to the flight attendants. Put your own mask on before you can put anybody else's on, because you have to breathe before you can help anybody else breathe.
Exactly.
But you're right. I mean, there's, the selfishness piece that people feel is so prevalent right now. And I think we need to, talk about it. Talk about it, right?
Right. It's actually selfless when you think about it. I need to make sure I've had dinner, or I'm going to be so angry that when I'm dealing with whatever that situation is, I'm not going to be pleasant and it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. Or I think, too, realizing when you are in that moment, saying, I am not going to use this moment against somebody else. I need to own this. And I need to realize, I need to eat so that I don't have to take this out on somebody else for my lack of time. I love it. Love it.
And sometimes it can be as simple as taking a minute to do a breathing exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, literally 1 minute to calm yourself down so you don't say things you regret, so you don't burn a bridge, which can happen in a heartbeat.
Then you have to take responsibility for that
Exactly.
and try to make it work. My daughter came home, I was dropping her off at school one day and she did not want to get out of the car. And I'm like, come on, Ollie, like, we got to go. And she looked at me and she goes, take a breath. She was 2
I love
at the time.
it. I love it.
She didn't get that from me.
What a smart girl.
So I walked into school and I said, do you guys say take a breath when the kids need a break? And they're like, oh yeah. So she got it from school. So my 2-year-old reminded me that we just needed to take a breath, Mom. Take
Smart.
a breath. Yeah. So I love it. So I think about that all the time too. Some signs and symptoms of burnout. Just a couple here. There was a bunch, but reduced performance or productivity, anxiety, obviously, detachment, feeling listless, low mood, difficulty concentrating, cynicism. Ooh, that was a big one too. Loss of purpose, low commitment to the role, negative attitude towards coworkers or job, lack of creativity.
So look at all the detrimental things that are going to happen if you haven't taken care of yourself.
Yeah.
You're not going to do a good job.
Yes.
Your
Period.
purpose is gone.
And then there's physical symptoms of burnout too, what we talked about earlier, exhaustion, generalized aches, headaches, gastrointestinal disorders, hypertension, difficulty sleeping, disturbed sleep cycle, muscle tension, susceptibility to colds and flu. Like there's so much here in mental health that we really need to make important and make light of, because everybody goes through these things every day, right? And so it's kind of identifying what's happening, and then, like we said, figuring out what your trigger was, and then how to release that trigger too.
Yes.
This is really interesting to me. Like I had a jaw-dropping moment. I wanted to know, how long does burnout last? This is a dormant chronic stress that only results in burnout after a period of time. But then it goes on to say that it takes at least 11 weeks to recover from a full burnout. 11 weeks.
Wow.
That's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time.
So you can spend 11 weeks working on your mental health, or you can take 11 weeks to work on the recovery part, right?
Or you can just build positive practices into your days so that you are preventing mental illness.
Drink water.
Right, exactly.
That's a easy.
It's easy.
One step.
Yeah.
And then, prevention of burnout. So 7 tips on recovery. Track your stress levels, which I'm not really sure how to track my stress levels. Maybe we're talking about the triggers. Identifying the stressors, which we've talked about too. Create a habit of journaling. I think I've often heard people say that they journal a lot. And me, I'm a talker. I like to talk. I'll even talk to myself out loud about the things that I'm feeling, so that I'm, putting it out there. But maybe writing it down really works for other people too. Seek professional help. Build a support network. Get enough exercise. This last one's really cool. Speak up for yourself.
Yes, self-advocacy is huge.
Yeah.
That's where I was talking about, let your boss know what's going on with you. Don't hide it.
Yeah.
Don't let it be a surprise all of a sudden. Chances are it won't be, because if your productivity has been going down and you have not been fun to be around, they're going to know something's going on, and they may approach you before you approach them. But you just have to be open about this sort of thing and talk to somebody.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. So I, and speaking of these things too, and kind of, maybe this is making people feel overwhelmed, right? This particular conversation, like, I just don't, like, I can't do all that, right? I don't want to take the time to organize things. I belong to a gym called Elite Performance out here in Newark, and they send emails like all the time. And sometimes they're particular to whatever's going on. Sometimes they're about meals. Sometimes they're about how to, get to peak performance. But sometimes, and I really appreciate this, it's just about like, hey, if you can only do the minimum, then at least do the minimum. It's something. And it's okay for you to need to go through periods of rest.
Oh, sure. You're just like physically when you exercise, you have to let your body recover.
Yeah.
You have to do the same thing for your head.
Yeah. So again, it is okay to go through periods of rest. You're not being lazy.
No.
You're not being selfish. You just need a rest period.
Right.
And it was that particular email was just so striking to me that it hit me on a day that I really needed to read it. And so I really appreciated this whole kind of thought process that they were going on is it's okay to go through periods of not being okay too.
Right.
You know, and if what we can do is just the minimum, then at least do that. What's the next right thing? Take that next right step, whatever that means for you.
Absolutely. And it's different for everyone.
Yeah. And if you are questioning what that means, you can watch Frozen 2, where Anna talks about taking the next right step after she thought she lost her sister. So there's a really good scene in that too. It's a wonderful song as well. So if you really need a light, and I just love it, I really do. But if you need a light interpretation of what that means, then I suggest that you take a peek at that movie.
Frozen 2.
Frozen 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Good to know.
And so there is also I just want to briefly mention the difference between a burnout and a breakdown. What identifies that?
Well, I would say a breakdown is a time when you just are falling apart.
Yeah.
You can't move forward. And maybe it's at you've gotten to that last part of burnout.
Yeah.
Because it talks there about a complete physical and mental stop. But if you've had some kind of trauma, something bad has happened, you have felt, and maybe it's cumulative, maybe it's multiple things have gone wrong and you just have not been able to rise back to your norm, and you just burst into tears and can't talk and you're done.
Yeah.
That's a sign. You need to take a break. You've got to talk to somebody. And it can be a friend. It can be a family member. If you can't move past that, you've got to see a professional. Call your family doctor. Say, I'm really struggling and I need to talk with my doc as soon as possible, or the nurse practitioner or someone. You've got to make something happen so that you can stop and breathe. I had a friend recently call me, and she was really struggling, and she said, can you please talk me through one of those breathing exercises right now, because I can't get it together. And I did it on the phone, and it worked. And she was able to face what she had to face. It was a really difficult medical situation. My mother-in-law was once in the hospital, and things were out of her control, and she knew she was not going to be able to go home as she wanted to do right at that moment. And she was having a panic attack, and I got a call asking if I could come over right away, and I did, and I walked her through breathing, and it took us a few minutes, but she was able to regulate herself and get her breathing back to normal and stop doing that, sobbing thing that people start doing where they can't stop.
Yeah.
And then we could talk about next steps. So I know personally I've been able to help people gather themselves and gain some self-regulation in the heat of the moment and move forward. So
yeah, I think it's important too. I mean, if you just can't make a decision, then call somebody else to help you make that decision, right?
Exactly.
If you just can't get there.
Yep. And you need to, everybody's different. I have a daughter who is a list maker and a pros and cons person.
Oh, yeah.
And every decision she's ever made in her life, she has done that way. Other people are like, what do you need to write it down for? So everybody does things differently.
Yeah.
So use your own tools, your own coping mechanisms, whatever works for you. Like I said before, one person's response to a trauma is one person's response to a trauma.
Right. Absolutely. Very individual.
Yes.
And if you need help figuring out what goes in your toolbox, there's people that can help you create your toolbox.
Absolutely.
We talk a lot on this show about the importance of saying no. And everybody has their own interpretation of what that means and what that looks like. But I would really love for you to kind of give us some insight on, how do we say no? when we just have all these balls up in the air, like how do we say no? Because
So I had to learn this the hard way.
Okay.
Because like you, Jamie, when I was your age and had 2 children and they were involved in 20 things
Yes.
each, and I had my own business, and my husband was working, and we all were busy. We had dogs. We just had a lot going on. And of course I was volunteering a lot and all of those things. And I loved my life. I loved being active and engaged and involved in our community. And there came a point where I felt myself like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all this done? And I'm a really organized person, so I had my tools that I used all the time. But there came a point where I had to say, I called it my helium hand. I had to stop it from rising into the air.
Yes.
I had to stop saying, I can do that. I'll do that. I can take that on. No, I don't need help.
Yeah.
That was my norm. And I had to stop doing that because it became too much. My responsibilities were not, you can't do anything well if you're doing everything half. You've got to
say that again.
You can't do anything well if you're doing everything half.
Write that down.
Halfway.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes. So I had to learn my own limits.
Sure.
Everybody has their own limits. And there was a point in time at which I said, maybe those parents that just come to the game and then leave from the game and they don't bring the snack and they don't schedule the party and they don't host the party and they don't, all those other extra things that we were doing, maybe they had the right idea. Of course, I never got there, but I love it too. I loved the engagement too much.
Sure.
I loved the involvement. I loved being there to watch my kids and do all that. And not that other people don't, but I'm just saying for some people, that's not where their strengths lie and it's not where their interests are. So you need to learn, what are you good at? What can you manage? How much can you fit into your life?
And the reason that I often ask people to define this is because I want to give people the understanding, like, it is actually okay to say no.
Absolutely.
And everybody's different interpretation of this too. I mean, we need to figure out how to create healthy boundaries. There are toxic people in our life, right? There are toxic places and things to our life that we can start there and say no to those things, and then kind of everything else will happen at some point too. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree with all of that.
I thought so. And then a couple more things. I know we need to kind of wrap up the show, but talk to us about mental health recovery. I know that we talked about the screenings is a good place to start. Where else can we go?
Well, let's see. There are support groups. There's a wealth of information online. There are books. See what works for you.
Yeah.
Try to make sure you're vetting your online sources. I'm not even sure. There's so much out there. It's hard to even tell. I mean, go to the Cleveland Clinic. Go to the places that you know are really reputable when you're reading about a syndrome or a disorder or something like that. We have things like mental health first aid training that I co-facilitate with several other people here in our county. And that's it's a full day training that we offer to any organization, any company, any school staff, whoever would like to have it. And in fact, we're starting a program at the Y where we will be doing youth mental health first aid training for all of their staff and their coaches and so on. Yeah, it's a great training that just gives you the basics so that you understand what the different signs and symptoms are, how to react, what the resources are that we have in our community and things like that. Let's see. There's just a wealth of stuff out there. If you're concerned, follow up. If you really think that you or someone you love needs help, we've got things like Behavioral Health Care Partners Care Now Clinic. The address is 104 East Main Street. They're open Monday to Friday. I believe they open at 9:30 in the morning. They've got mental health support there, counselors, therapists. They also have a nurse practitioner who is there 4 days a week, and that person is able to prescribe meds. They can do an assessment. They do assessments on Fridays that you can walk into their clinic and be assessed for ongoing services.
Okay.
So it's an awesome resource
That's
here in our community.
fantastic.
Yes, it's relatively new, and it's right in downtown Newark,
Yeah.
so it's in the right location, and a wonderful resource for our community.
And I'll mention too, the Chamber of Commerce website has a business directory, and it also has a list of all the businesses and nonprofits that are chamber members, but they are, the list of resources is out there for you too. How do we get a hold of Mental Health America?
Our website is www.mhalc.org.
Okay.
You can call us at 740-522-1341. You can email me at psitler@mhalc.org. We are there to help. If we can't help, we will try to get you to the right place. If you have real general questions, 211's a wonderful resource. They can help with anything from mental health questions to where do I get food, what help is there out there for me for housing, things
wow.
like that. Yeah, they can answer. They've got a huge resource guide. It's online, or you can call them. You can also text them.
Okay. Wonderful. I didn't know that. And I just want you have this wonderful self-care quote that I want you to leave everybody with today.
It is my favorite. So self-care means giving the best of you instead of the rest of you.
Write that down. I love it. I love that so much. Super relevant. What books and podcasts are you into right now?
Oh gosh, I will tell you that I really read for pleasure. I couldn't even tell you right now what I'm reading because it's one of those books that I just picked up and it's literally fluff. I love historical fiction. I enjoy a good mystery. So
Okay.
yes,
That's great.
Yes.
I love this because we don't often talk about the importance of fiction in our lives
Right.
as well. So
So I'm reading a Jim Collins book for a women's group that I belong to, Women in Nonprofit Leadership, and he's great, but it's work.
yeah.
So when it's a great book. It really is. It's going to be a wonderful thing to have us all discuss. But when I want to relax, I need to read stuff that doesn't remind me of work.
Yeah.
Honestly,
You don't have to journal afterwards.
Yes,
I get
exactly.
it. I love that too. And then my last question is, what is your biggest life hack?
Ooh, my biggest life hack. It's got to be breathing. Honestly,
Okay.
I do it all the time. I did it before I walked in here today, and I don't even get nervous about this kind of stuff because I've been doing it for so long. But just to reset my mind, we had a rough conversation at work this morning. Not a bad work thing. I don't want anyone to have the wrong idea, but just something bad happened to a dear staff member of ours. So that happened before I came here, and so I needed to reset. And so I did a little 2-minute breathing in my car before I walked in the door.
So where can somebody, if they want to learn how to do these breathing techniques?
Look for square breathing. It's the very easiest thing in the world to do.
Okay.
Square breathing. And then grounding exercises are another really great one where you use your 5 senses. And I have seen Andy Gillespie, who is a wonderful resource of ours in our community. He works for BHP. He's in charge of their crisis department. Andy, on the phone, literally talks someone off a ledge using a grounding exercise.
Oh, wow.
Where what you do is you have somebody find 5 things that they see in their environment, 4 that they hear, 3 that they can touch, 2 that they can smell, 1 that they can taste. And by the time he was done with that, that person was calm.
Yeah.
He was able to have a regulated conversation at that point instead of being totally not regulated.
Wow. But that's fantastic. Well, I'm glad that you
Those
said
2
that.
things
then.
are wonderful.
So square breathing and then grounding exercises. Wonderful. Penny, Thank you so much for being here. I know this was probably a very emotional show, the most maybe emotional that we've done here. So I appreciate your vulnerability, the openness that you have, the connection to your emotion. Of course, I certainly appreciate that. So,
Well,
thanks.
I appreciate you having me. It's been
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you,
This is
Jamie.
a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is fun.
I know, right? Well, thank you guys for tuning in this month, and be sure to join us on our next show. And we've got a really cool lineup happening this summer. So check it out. Until next time, you guys, stay safe.